Take a closer look now at Donald Trump's message to the people of Iran that Kamran was referencing there. Writing on his Truth Social platform, he called the protesters patriots and encouraged them to take over the country's institutions. He said that those committing violence against demonstrators would pay a big price, adding that he suspended all talks with Iran's government. He called the killing of protesters senseless and said help was on its way. What did Trump mean by that sentence? Help is on the way. A journalist put that question to the U.S. president as he addressed reporters in Detroit.
You said to Iran this morning that help is on the way for protesters. What did you mean by that? What kind of help?
You're going to have to figure that one out. I'm sorry.
Well, Bilal Saab is going to help us figure that out. He's a senior managing director of Trends US, a company providing analysis on political defense and security issues related to the U.S. and its Middle East partners. Welcome to DW. What do you think Trump might mean when he says help is on his way?
Well, as I'm sitting here talking to you, you know that the National Security Council is going to hold a meeting. The president might show up, he might not show up, but this is a meeting where they're going to present to him a bunch of options in terms of response to the Iranian crisis. And those can range from, conventional strike, be it limited or something more painful, to an extended bombing campaign. And then you got the non-kinetic options, of course, cyber operations, pretty much all sorts of means that fall under the umbrella of what we call psychological warfare, right? And then, of course, harsher economic punishment. And you've heard already that the president has said that anybody doing business with Iran, I don't know what that means, doing business, but let's just say trading with Iran, will be suffering from 25% tariffs on trade with the United States. So the options are all of them there. Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary in the White House, said only President Trump knows what President Trump is going to do. I actually happen to believe her. So he's quite an unpredictable commander-in-chief. So we're going to have to wait for the next few hours to see what he's going to decide.
You mentioned these 25% tariffs. Is that likely to influence the Iranian regime at all?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the countries that are going to be most directly affected are going to be trading nations with the Iranians. Obviously, at the very top of that is going to be the Chinese, because they buy most of their oil from Iran. But then you also have trading partners who happen to be friendly with the United States. We're talking about the Indians, the Pakistanis, South Koreans, the Emiratis. All of those are going to have to suffer the consequences of that decision. But in terms of having a direct effect on the economic survival of the regime at this point, it's pretty much in such an existential crisis against the protesters. The economics of it right now, frankly, seem to be a little bit less relevant day by day.
Mm-hmm. Trump is very invested in this uprising. He's trying to encourage the protest movement. What interest is the U.S. pursuing in Iran, really?
Oh, I love that question, because this is where, frankly, the entire conversation should start. Before we jump the gun about, what kind of a strike is it going to be, what kind of a response is it going to be, we all need to have a better understanding of why the hell would he be pursuing any of those means, right? So what is the U.S. national interest in all of this? And what is the objective that is intended behind any kind of response? And this is where I fear, and I got to be brutally honest here, this is where I fear, if you want to be perfectly objective about it, that there might be some kind of divergence between the U.S. national interest and then the hopes and dreams of the Iranian protesters. What I mean by that is that I think the U.S. national interest would be served, at least in the short term, by having a government in Tehran that would essentially give up its destructive agenda abroad, not domestically. So it would stop its missile program, it would sever ties with the proxies in the region, and then maybe it would dismantle its nuclear enrichment infrastructure. If it fulfills those conditions, I think President Trump will find it very hard to say no if there were such a deal to be made with the Iranians. And you know that the Iranians have already reached out to President Trump privately, asking for some kind of negotiations, although he did rule it out for the time being. So if he does do a deal with the Iranians and then keep them in power, some sort of a version of the current regime, obviously that goes against the interests of the Iranian protesters. So having perfect match between the U.S. national interests and the hopes and dreams of the Iranians is going to be incredibly difficult, frankly. And some trade-offs are going to have to be made.
All of that said, there are some hopes, at least, being pinned on Reza Pahlavi. And Donald Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, reportedly met with him, the exiled son of Iran's last Shah, over the weekend. Why is the U.S. administration interested in Reza Pahlavi?
They got to talk to him. I mean, I'm pretty sure it was kind of like a conversation where Trump, called Steve Witkoff and told him, just go feel him out, see what he's all about. I don't know anything about him. But they have to talk to him because he's someone who obviously is a voice who's been chanted in the Iranian uprising. I can't give you numbers about how popular he is. Some people say that he's got, I don't know, like anywhere from 60 to 65% approval rating. But this is someone that you just simply cannot ignore. Now, Trump himself has not endorsed him yet. I mean, he had a chance to endorse him in a recent interview that he did here in the U.S., but he did not endorse him, just like he didn't endorse the opposition leader in Venezuela, if you recall. But this is sort of, frankly, just the process of starting to get to know who he is. And so he dispatched his envoy, told him, go talk to him, see what he's all about. He might invite him to a few meetings. Maybe he'll be attending the National Security Council meeting today. Who knows? But at this point, he's not exactly super enthusiastic about him. He's not very warm towards him. He might change his mind. We'll see.
That was Bilal Saab of Trends US. Great speaking to you today. Thanks for your time.
It's a pleasure.
We can speak now to John Hoffman. He focuses on defence and foreign policy at the Cato Institute in Washington. Hi there. Trump, as we've just heard, told the Iranian protesters help is on its way. How do you think Trump should respond, given that his own red line of violence against protesters has been crossed by the regime?
Sure. First, thank you for having me on. Second, I think in classic Trump fashion, nobody really knows what Trump means at this current moment. Maybe Trump doesn't even know. We've seen him impose the 25% tariffs on countries that trade with Iran. We've heard rumors about possible cyber attacks, further sanctions. But of course, what everybody is concerned about and what he's hinted at multiple times is direct military action. And to me, this carries a tremendous amount of risk and should be avoided. This unfortunately seems to be the path that the United States is heading down without really thinking through the ramifications of such actions.
You're saying military action should be avoided. Does that mean you think there is still room for diplomacy here?
I think there's still room for diplomacy, but I think Trump actually, in the beginning days of this, if you remember when Reza Pahlavi came and visited the United States, Trump actually didn't meet with him. I think that hands-off, arm's length approach is what Donald Trump should be adopting. Look, Iran is a brutal dictatorship involved in a host of malign activities across the Middle East. It's ruthlessly autocratic. Iranians all deserve to live free and determine their own future. But the United States cannot be the one to politically engineer a new status quo or enforce a new status quo in the status quo or inside Iran. It has to be self-sustaining.
I'd like to ask you a bit about why Trump's getting involved in the first place and what he's trying to achieve. Does this really involve the people of Iran, or is it more based on US interests?
I think a lot of us are asking us this question is, what is the end game? And naturally, I think many of us are led to the conclusion that the United States desires regime change in Iran. This is a multi-decade effort of folks within, hawkish folks within Washington, D.C., and a lot of the United States regional partners who have pushed for direct confrontation with Iran. And what we've seen over the years is this constant moving of the goalpost. And once protests broke out, this is being seized now as a new rationale for intervening. But regime change within Iran, if this is the end game here, this cannot be secured through airstrikes alone. And what worries me is that those who are clamoring for American involvement will likely press the United States to remain engaged, to ensure the regime's demise, and then to manage an internal transition because they're putting forward this maximalist agenda and keep moving the goalposts.
Do you think the Trump administration is perhaps emboldened maybe by the last few days and what they perceive as success in Venezuela, for example, that's enabling them to make these kinds of statements when it comes to Iran?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. And look, Trump loves flashy, what he views as victories that come with very little costs. But I think this is a classic example, Venezuela included, of where you would have perhaps tactical success, but strategic failure. And Trump, being Donald Trump, likes these things that are super flashy and likes this bombastic rhetoric. But when you take a step back and when you actually look at the strategy here, if you're proceeding without concrete and achievable objectives, this risks plunging the United States into an open-ended conflict with Tehran, regardless of what Trump might tweet any particular day.
Thanks a lot for that, John. We've been speaking with John Hoffman at Washington's Cato Institute. Thanks a lot for your insights today.
Thank you for having me.